Hi, I'm Kristen from Scrap Fabric Love, and today's video is all about finishing up an unfinished quilt project, or a UFO. This is a quilt top. It's a Carpenter's Star from a Missouri Star Quilt Company tutorial that I made ages ago and then just never quilted. Here it is, unironed and squished. I used a layer cake, which isn't something I usually do, and then I wasn't crazy about the lack of contrast between the background that I chose, which was not part of the layer cake, and the the layer cake squares themselves. I should have chosen a better contrast. Anyway, so I never did anything with it. But I'm on a kick to finish projects in the next couple of weeks. So what you can see me doing now is piecing remnants of fleece so that I can make a cozy backing for this quilt. I've decided it's going to be super cozy and warm because I want to experiment with some couching on the front. I've never done couching before and I don't have couching feet, so it's going to be an experiment. So here it is pieced. I've got the pattern side of this fleece on the back because I didn't want it on the side of the backing you can actually see. So this was from that remnants box, if you saw that video that I did quite a while ago. Obviously it was a cute print. You could have used it for something, baby quilt or something, but it suits my purpose for this, so I decided to turn it around. So I'm gonna just lay the quilt top on, see if I feel like the backing's big enough, and then cut the batting and get on with it. Okay, so here it is. Now obviously the top's not ironed, it needs to be pressed, and it's fine, I think, top and bottom, or whatever you want to call that, but the sides, I feel like once I quilt that, once it's pressed, I'm going to be cut a little bit short. So I'm going to trim up the sides and add one, whatever kind of thin panel I can with my fleece scraps down one side just to make it that teeny bit bigger, and then hopefully we'll be good. I was quilting this quilt on my moxie, Handi Quilter moxie long arm. I've got other videos about that if you don't know what it is. I really just did these kind of loop-de-loops all over the quilt because I knew I was going to add the couching later, so I just wanted something pretty simple. So it was just all over, just these loop-de-loops, nothing complicated. And here comes the experimental bit. Now, I've seen people doing couching with this sort of baby quilt yarn. I'll put a link in the description to the yarn, using Handi Quilter couching feet, which are special feet designed for couching, but they're expensive and I didn't know if I was going to like this. So here I am using the smallest square foot, which I already owned, for the Handi Quilter, which also has a little hole in the bottom. And just following the directions from the Handi Quilter video, I'll link to that in the description as well. You basically just secure your threads and pull the yarn through. Best to watch it from somebody who really knows what they're doing. So do watch that other video. And then once you get the yarn in place, as you stitch along, your stitches should catch and sew the yarn onto the top. So that's the couching. And you can do couching with other things. It doesn't have to be yarn, but that's generally what you tend to see. And I think the idea with the couching feet is the hole's a bit smaller, so you pretty much are always catching the yarn, whereas with the foot that I'm using, you might have some issues. I found it was okay. It worked really, really well, actually, any direction except backwards, so like away from me. So if I was coming towards myself or on an angle like I am here, it worked just fine in the square foot. But when I was trying to stitch from the front of the frame to the back of the frame, I couldn't get that to work. So then I had to take the yarn kind of out of the foot and just stitch over it. So I'll show you that in another clip a little bit later. So I kind of went back and forth for the whole quilt, doing it this way, which is basically like the traditional, well, not traditional, but anyway, the standard way you would do it if you had a couching foot, with the yarn going through the hole, and then alternated with just sort of placing the yarn in place and stitching on top of it, which basically you could do with any foot. So you wouldn't even need the square foot or anything with a hole in it. So I feel like, I don't know, I felt like it was easy enough, to be honest. The biggest issue I had was tugging on it. So if you see them doing it with the couching foot, they tell you just to pull the yarn. You don't even really guide it that much because I guess it's so secure in the hole. But I was trying to follow what I'm trying to do with the couching here is kind of outline the Carpenter's Star. I thought that would give it the contrast that I was looking for. So, yeah, anyway, when I would pull that too much, I could actually break the yarn. So I needed to kind of be a bit gentle with it and not pull at it. This is me just advancing the frame. The other issue well, not issue, but the other thing I had to just contend with in doing this is obviously the frame space of the moxie and being able to do just that much couching and then moving on. So I would cut a little tail like you can see here, leave it, and then just overlap with another piece of yarn once I got back to that point. So this is the end of the quilt, or the top of the quilt. I was kind of rolling it backwards after I'd quilted it. So so I was having to do, sections at a time. But I actually found it was, both methods were easy enough. By the end, I was doing it a lot more like this, which is where I'm just basically securing my threads over the tail I'd already made, and then just adding, like layering another piece of yarn underneath it. You'll see me do it in a second. And then just following the outline of my carpenter's star to just add this sort of soft, tactile kind of outline. It's still a pale pink. It probably doesn't add that much contrast of color, but I feel like it helps a little bit. And it was the only thing I could think of to kind of rescue this quilt in my mind and make it a little more special, because I was just not loving the way the fabrics were looking before. So and it was, I like to just experiment and try things. So this is me just layering the bits of yarn one on top of the other, and then you can't see because my hand's in the way, stitching over that there, just stitching over it there. And then I went sort of back a few times just to make sure that that bit stayed down. So there's a few, maybe I'm lifting the foot to get the yarn underneath there, a few maybe little lumpy bits where there's 2 bits of yarn, but you really don't notice. And again, I've seen them doing that to sort of end when they're couching on the Handi Quilter videos. And again, I will link to all of them, because obviously they're professionals who do this, properly. I'm just kind of going, don't have the foot, I'll just try it anyway. But I think I could probably get on without the feet if I was just doing it every now and again. Maybe if I wanted to do loads all over a quilt, I would need it. But if you have them, I'd love to know from you, please, if how much having the couching feet helps. I guess I have seen on some of the videos where they use Pro Stitcher. I don't have Pro Stitcher, so I guess it would help to have it super secure in the foot for that, because the machine is just moving on its own, and you're not kind of keeping as close an eye on it as if you were moving it manually, I guess. But if there's any other advantages to the couching feet, if you use them all the time and you love them, please let me know in the comments. I am definitely one for buying new gadgets, so that if there was enough of a reason to buy them, I probably would. But I feel like I got out okay with the square foot, and I don't even know if I needed the square foot, or if I could have used just another one with a hole or whatever. So if you've done couching without the proper foot, if you have any other tips for folk, that would be great to stick in the comments as well. So anyway, I kind of quite enjoyed it. I didn't find it too difficult, and it was just something fun and new to add a touch of something soft to the quilt. So I don't know who this one's going to be for yet, but it's a finished UFO, so that's good. I found some peach scraps well, not so much scraps, but peach plain fabric for the binding that I bought in a fabric de-stash. I bought a whole bunch of solids. I'm going to put up a short of that fabric scrap haul that I got from whoever was de-stashing all these solids. And I cut them up into 2.5-inch strips and made peachy binding that's very similar to this peach fabric you can see here. And frankly, I wasn't sure where else I was going to use that peach, so I think it was a good match. So you'll see that in a minute. Here's just a little bit more of the couching sped up, just so you can see a bit more how it went. I would also love to hear in the comments, if you do use couching a lot, how you use it, and what kind of quilts and what kind of designs and what kind of yarn and all that kind of stuff. I'd love to know what your favorite way to use couching is. So here it is just off the frame before it was bound, and then here it is finished with that peach binding I was talking about. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Still not a super amazing contrast. It's still definitely a very pale colors, but I just think it adds a bit something, and I was glad I gave the couching a try. I'm not sure when else I would have tried it necessarily, so it was good fun to do. And the backing is lovely and fleecy and warm too. There it is, the pieced bit there, and just some closer up shots of the couching so you can see what that all looks like. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like experimenting with your quilts or just making scrap quilts, I don't usually use layer cakes, then please do subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks so much for spending time with me. Bye.